Good morning, everybody. Sorry, I was looking at the YouTube chat, commenting at Jeremiah and J-Rock, so I might have been delayed there on the start. But welcome to a Tuesday edition of Morning Cuppa Hockey presented by Bet365. That's the second time I've done this. Open an account with Bet365 today and bet on a huge range of markets, whatever the moment. It's never ordinary at Bet365. So use our code NATION, NATION, in all caps. That's a hot start to today's show. Did I have the blank stare on my face for like 5 seconds, Colby? How long was it?
It was about 20 seconds.
I was looking at Jeremiah and J-Rock in the chat on YouTube on my other tab, so I missed the start of the show. But we got a lot to get into today because last night was pure misery at Madison Square Garden. The Devils came in and beat the crap out of the New York Rangers by the score of 5-1. It got started off, I think 87 seconds in was the first goal of Jesper Bratt 2-on-1, which fired me up. I've been arguing about it on Twitter for the last 12 hours. I've been arguing with Colby about it for the last 40 minutes. And I'll keep arguing about it for the next hour or so. But we got Arthur Staple joining the show here in about 10 minutes. He covers the Rangers and the Islanders for The Athletic, does a great job. So we'll talk to him about some trade rumors, about what's going on with the Islanders, what the Rangers should look for, what the Rangers are going to do. But before we do any of that, Colby,
are we really going to talk about the Islanders? I don't think we're going to talk about the Islanders.
We're talking about the Islanders. I actually want to ask Arthur, because all the reactions that we've gotten from Ranger fans and from Ranger management, I feel like should have been coming from the Islanders for the past 2 years. Like there's none of that from the Islanders, right? Like, we need to make trades. We need to shake up this core. We need to fire our GM. Like, it's all the Rangers saying these things right now, but this should have been the Islanders for like the past year. No?
Look, I went yesterday. I went to the farmer's market, the butcher that I go to in Suburban Square in Lower Merion. And the guy who runs the butcher shop is a hockey guy. And he saw me, and I know him. I go there a couple days a week or whatever. And he's a Flyers fan, so he used to watch me when I was working for the Flyers on their TV. And the first thing he said to me, "Lavi's getting fired." And I was like, whoa. Like, the butcher he's a huge sports guy, but that was the first thing he even said to me before he even greeted me. And I thought that was kind of funny. I said to him, I don't know. I don't think Lavi's quite at that place yet where we're talking about him getting fired, but certainly a lot of discomfort happening in New York. And before we get into it, I just want to say, so I put that tweet out, that video of the whole Celebrini Michkov thing yesterday. And I was actually pretty surprised. There were more rational responses than I ever would have thought. Now, granted, there were plenty of totally unrational responses. But there was a lot of very, very rationally responsive things to me coming from Flyers fans, which I was shocked, to be honest with you. Again, 90% unhinged, irrational, whatever. And then people were dragging Bedard into it, which I thought was kind of funny. But anyways, I guess there was a small sliver of people that I was like, all right, fair point. At least you can admit it. At least you're being reasonable in your thought process yesterday. But those clips, they did take on a life of their own. I mean, your Jacob Trouba clip is still taking on a life of its own. And I know, Jordan Schmaltz weighed in on that one. But look, we've got a busy show for everybody this morning. We're going to spend the first bit of the show talking about the Rangers, the breakdowns last night. You mentioned
the Devils too. I mean, and as they deserve it. But I mean, look, Steve Valiquette kind of stole the show last night. Singsy, I was sitting in my room watching these games, and I saw Singsy's Twitter, and we had already been talking about it, but I was just laughing at Singsy because he was on one with that tweet. He was all fired up because he's obviously a Devils guy. But the other person we're going to have join our show about halfway through, we're going to have Carter Hutton come on our show. Former goalie in the National Hockey League, works at the Nation Network, doing a bunch of different shows for us. But he's going to come on and talk about Anthony Stolarz, who played really well for the Leafs last night. He kind of goalied the Blackhawks, which is, you wouldn't expect to see. What do you mean? Wait. By the way, the Blackhawks yesterday put out their own graphic of their team total, in Toronto tonight, and it was team total under 1.5 goals, over under 1.5 goals.
Like I thought that was weird. I should have sent that to Vic this morning, but a team actually putting out their goal total line, I thought that was a bit odd.
Desperate times call for desperate measures. So, and then the other thing we're going to talk to him about is the whole, well, Casey DeSmith was great for Dallas last night. And I want to know from him if he thinks that could potentially be Scott Wedgewood, going to Colorado. So second part of the show, maybe 9:35, 9:40 is going to be a lot of goaltending stuff. And we're probably going to have to revisit Shesterkin when he comes on too and get his opinion, because that's a big thing. You and I are in disagreement this morning. Right?
Yeah.
Like you were actually yelling at me. You said fans, and I quote, all Ranger fans are morons.
Just the ones who disagree with me.
And there is receipts for that for those of you who do not believe me. And so let's get into the goals, Johnny, because you were like fired up. You literally texted us and you were like, I can't even do the show this morning. I'm so angry. And I was like, wow, Johnny's gonna have a spine. I can't wait to see it.
All right, so before we go into Rangers
Devils, the floor
Devils,
is yours, son.
Let's just talk about our sponsor, Proraso, the most complete choice for shaving and beard care, made in Italy since 1948. Proraso has been a staple of Italian culture and barbershops globally for 4 generations. So get 15% off at Proraso-USA.com with our promo code Hockey15 in all caps, Hockey15. I do want to save the Valaket stuff for when Arthur Staple comes on, because Arthur and Steve Valaket actually did a show together previously and know each other very well. So I feel like Arthur can touch on that a little bit more. But the first goal to me last night, Rangers Devils, I mean, this is where the game was totally lost already. Like, there is no way the Rangers are coming back from this. They're 2-8-1 going into this game when they allow the first goal. But let's just watch how this unfolds. Braden Schneider tries to start a rush on a 2-on-4. There's no numbers here. I don't really know what he's doing. He should have dumped the puck in. The Rangers don't have anything going. Then, as we have it in slow-mo, thank you, Vic, courtesy of SG, the Devils have full possession. Vic, if you can pause it quickly right here. Devils have full possession of the puck in the corner. Andre Palat picks it up. You have 2 forwards coming off the bench. One of them is Alexis Lafreniere, who goes in and dive bombs. I know he's trying to maybe break up a pass, but you got to make a better read there. You're not going to get there quick enough to break that pass up. Jesper Bratt's coming right through the middle of the ice, and then
wait, are you justifying the Lafreniere? Because I just heard a little justification from you, and you
not at all. Not at all.
All right, I just want to make sure.
Lafreniere has to accept the rush there if he's going to go in. If he's going to go in, it has to be at least a second and a half earlier. At that point, the Devils have full possession.
Okay.
And he has to accept the rush. What?
All right. I just want to address Singsy in the chat.
What did he say?
Great. He says, great release from Palat here. Like, are we talking, you're saying this is a great pass, Singsy? Great. What are we, when you say great release, I'm not necessarily fully tracking you on that. So I want to know what Singsy says. Go ahead, Johnny.
What? Yeah, what the hell? Let me go. Thank you, Tommy. Let me finish. So right here, Artemi Panarin, he's supposed to be covering the point. That's something you're taught as a mite when you play hockey. You see a defenseman go in down low, you need F3, you need one forward to cover the point and cover for the defenseman. Panarin here, I don't know what he's doing. He's following Lafreniere and checking forward, chasing the puck, and then turns toward the boards, turns the wrong way, and then Jesper Bratt has the entire middle of the ice. One of the Devils' best forwards, a 30-goal scorer in the NHL, untouched from his own blue line in on a 2-on-1. In no world in the NHL should a team get a 2-on-1 3/4 of the ice the entire way. And then you can take over from here, Colby, because the rest, sure, it was played well. Keandre Miller did a fine job defending this 2-on-1. Igor probably could have made that save. But if you're watching this goal happen and blaming the goalie, shame on you, because that is on both forwards who come off the bench and don't take a second to think of where the puck is and where Jesper Bratt is, and the Devils, who are the most 2 dangerous Devils on the ice, coming down the other way in a 2-on-1. Those are the last 2 guys you want to see. And Jesper Bratt actually in the postgame said that he thought Shesterkin knows that him and Jack Hughes on 2-on-1s usually make a pass. So he thought Shesterkin was cheating over for the pass, and that's why he went 5-hole on Shesterkin.
Okay. So first off, like, to me, Lafreniere is the main culprit of this play. When you're late in on a forecheck, you've got to pull yourself out. I mean, I show this clip to my junior team consistently, and I talk to them about F2 and F3 running on a fool's errand to dive into a play like that. And Lavi came out in his press conference and said, we discussed this. This is not something that surprises us. So I'm pointing all the fingers at 13 on this play. There's a reason he's minus 11 this season. I mean, their team is above 500. He's minus 11. You know, I'm starting to worry about if last year was just a flash in the pan for your boy Lafreniere. I guess I do think you and him have been partying too much. I mean, I heard Jeff Merrick talk about that on the sheet yesterday. Actually, I believe it was Zach who said it on the sheet. He was talking about how this is actually all your fault.
I'm getting a call from Mike Rupp. Should I say we're live on the show?
Well, I mean, you should text him and ask him if he wants to come on, because
we're live on Morning Cup of Hockey. You're on speaker. What do you want to say?
We'd love to get him onto the show. I mean, that would be the best case scenario here.
We got some things we got to chat about. Call me later.
I'll call you later. Okay.
Oh wow, you're in Rupper's doghouse, aren't you?
All right. I'll talk to you later.
The only thing that I want to say here, and Singsy has since clarified, he's talking about the tape-to-tape pass. I'm not that impressed with that play by Palat. I think Palat can do that in his sleep.
I could have done that.
But if you go back to the video here's my point, Johnny, on this play. And here's why I am blaming Shesterkin. And I'm not saying it's a bad goal, right? But if you could go back to the end of the video, maybe go ahead, roll it along a little bit, and maybe stop it like right about here. Okay, let's stop it right here. So as a defenseman, all right, this is how I was taught to play a 2-on-1 by David Quinn. And then it was echoed by every coach I ever had. Your job as a defenseman on a 2-on-1, the first thing you have to do, no, that's not the first thing you do. The first thing you do is you have to identify the hands of the shooters, okay? Because you have to figure out who is more dangerous. And right now, the least dangerous player on this 2-on-1 is actually Bratt, okay? My reasoning for that is he's a lefty on the left side. Yes, he's inside the dots, but his stick, all right, as a strong side player on their strong side, their stick is outside their body, okay? We're not talking about where his skates are. We're talking about where he shoots from, right? So K'Andre Miller is actually playing this perfectly, because the most dangerous player on the ice is Hughes. Yeah. Hughes is on his offside. He's a one-timer, okay? And he's by far and above the most. So your only thought process here, once you identify that you've got a strong side option and an offside option, is to make sure the goalie has his one-on-one, which is Hughes. Which is Bratt. And K'Andre Miller cannot allow this pass across. Otherwise, it's a slam dunk goal. So go ahead, like 2 or 3 more clips here, right here. Like, this is the most perfect way you could, like, as a defenseman, you couldn't play this any better. You literally couldn't.
I'm not disagreeing with you.
Hold on. You force Bratt to take a shot. Now, it's not a soft goal, okay? But here's my thought process here. Yeah. You've got a goaltender who we have labeled the best in the world, okay? I think consensus is that he's the best in the world, all right? He's asking for maybe he turned down $11.8 million. Was that the number?
It was
Johnny?
11. Just 11. Just 11.
11, whatever. Okay. He's looking to be 12.5, 13 million, whatever the number is, highest paid goaltender of all time. It's a minute and a half into the game. And if you are going to be that guy, you got to bail your team out here. You have to bail your team out.
Well, let me speak on that. Can I speak on that?
You can. And this shot doesn't go under the bar. It doesn't go posting in. It beats him low between his legs.
It's a talented goal scorer in the NHL, picking his spot.
Listen,
you have to credit Jessica Bratt there.
Listen, he's a goal scorer. That's what they do. They score goals. They score goals. But 2 things can be true at the same time. Yes. And go ahead, bring Arthur in, and let's let him weigh in on it. And I am not disagreeing. I am not disagreeing. And I'm sorry, Arthur, I will be done in 1 second here, but I am not disagreeing that the forecheck is a problem there. The awareness by Lafreniere, the awareness by Panarin. But I'm also saying, as a defenseman, you get put on your heels by 2 players who can skate. You play the 2-on-1 perfectly. You give up the least dangerous shot. If you want $13 million, you got to make that save. Like, That's just how that's going to be looked at. With
okay.
money comes
the guy wants a lot of
responsibility.
money, maybe because he faces those chances 20 times a night. That's the first minute and a half of the game. Then he has a breakaway by Jack Hughes 2 minutes later, and then a short-handed breakaway by Jesper Bratt 2 minutes after that.
Listen, with great money comes great responsibility, Johnny.
All right, Arthur.
Ask Superman. Good morning, Arthur.
Arthur's been so eager to come back on here. He literally looked across down the press box and goes, "Can I come on tomorrow?"
We love it. We love it, Arthur. We love it. Thanks for coming.
Now, we could talk about the specifics of that play or any play, but to me, we are so far beyond individual plays with this team in the last 2 weeks. Like, I get it. Like, yeah, Igor probably should have made that save. I think Johnny's point, since he watches every minute of every game, is that he's had to make that save about 150 times already in 24 games, maybe more. You know, I would say, like Steve Valiquette's site, which is really great to break down goalies by chance percentage, I would say that's a mid-danger chance. That's probably not even a high-danger chance in that situation based on what that is.
Hold it.
So
Don't
not maybe
yet.
not. But in the 5-game losing streak that the Rangers had, they gave up 63 high-danger chances in 5 games, 25 of those in the first period. This guy is under assault from the minute the puck drops. And if you are a goalie, whether you make league minimum or 5 or 10 or 15 or whatever, and you see the way that the team is playing, and in the first 90 seconds you give up the same chance, because they had given up the same chance to Hischier on a diagonal 150-foot pass where they were just doing God knows what in the neutral zone with the 1-3-1. They gave it up 35 seconds before, and then the 5 guys change, and then they do it again. So I imagine that, you know, a lot of what we're going to talk about today and what you guys have been talking about too is the human side of this. Like, the fans don't want to hear it necessarily about Jacob Trouba makes $8 million, Igor wants $13 million. Like, he's a human being. If he's seeing the same shit over and over again, more important than $13 million is, why does he want to be here?
That's what I was saying last night.
If this is the way the team is going to play, I've had this conversation with a lot of people around the league, and a lot of the people that I know from other teams are like, great, we're going to get ready to try to sign this guy on July 1, because if he doesn't want to be there, we want him here. So he is going to get his $13 million. Maybe we're talking $14 million, depending on who is making the offer. If it becomes a bidding war on July 1, it's going to go way, way up. And I think the question right now is, with all of the turmoil the last 2 weeks, if you're talking about Igor, is does he even want to be here for his asking price, which is probably 13 and change at this point. And I don't know what the answer is to that.
And Arthur, it's funny because the conversation is changing now. Colby, like when we started the show this season, you were asking me as time continued, will I get more nervous and nervous with Shesterkin not being signed at like these points of the season? And now, you know, I'm seeing Ranger fans after last night who are saying like, this guy can't even make a save. Why should we even want to sign him? You know, like it's
you still want him. He's still the best.
Of
a
course.
bad small, and not even bad. Arthur
if
just
I'm
gave
playing
us
in a
great
playoff
stats.
game, there's nobody I want in my net more than Igor Shesterkin. I don't care if you make your money in the regular season and your name in the playoffs. There's no guy I want more in the playoffs than that guy. But Arthur, I got to ask you now, like, should Ranger fans start to get nervous? Because now, you know, this point last year, maybe a little bit longer down the road, it was Jonathan Quick's net at that time. Like, Quick bailed them out last year. He might have to bail them out again this year. I don't know what's going on here.
Jonathan Quick has been an amazing story since he came to New York, a guy who seemed like he was pretty done at it. You know, certainly with all the 3 Stanley Cup rings, you'd figure what's the motivation, but he's been great. But his last 2 starts, what's the difference other than they managed to squeeze one out against one of the worst teams in the league in Montreal, thanks to their power play and a couple of good no calls from the officials. And, you know, once Montreal made that game 3-3, Canadians should have won that game. I think if they had
good no calls from the officials.
I think if Canadians had a couple more finishers, that game would have been another disappointment for the Rangers. So I don't know that there's any individual person that can fix this on the ice. And it's amazing to me. Geez, when was I on here? 2.5 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago? We were talking about some concerns with this team and, you know, trying to juggle all the things that they have to juggle. And now it's like, geez, who even cares what happens in the individual moments of a game, because they're just blurring together now. And it's all self-inflicted, which is the most amazing part of all of this, is that the general manager of this team and, just Madison Square Garden in general has tried to make this in-season message sending, blow it up, whatever the point of all of this was a couple of weeks ago when they sent out the notice to the other GMs that they were ready to move on from some guys, including some pretty core guys. It's all crumbling, and it's unbelievable how fast it's happened. And I don't think I've ever seen anything like it in the NHL.
Yeah. And Colby, one more thing is, if I may here, I know you want to get a question in, but
Go ahead.
Biggest shame to me of last night is I thought that was the Rangers' best offensive output in the last 5 or 6 games. They generated a lot. They did. Jacob Markstrom played phenomenal for the Devils last night, but because of these, like you said, Arthur, self-inflicted mistakes, that's all forgotten. I actually thought Mika Zibanejad was pretty good last night.
Yeah, I mean, the main problem is that you can't start the game, down 2-0. Mika was saying to me, the first goal, fine, you're down 1-0. Good teams go down 1-0. Bad teams go down 1-0, and it's perfectly normal. But in the context of now, in the context of what they've been doing, they're a completely fragile team emotionally. And when you break down, and maybe we'll go through it all, when you break down the sequence of events leading to the game last night, with all the things that have happened off the ice, on the ice, when they go down a goal, and they're playing that way. Yeah, they're not going to be able to pull themselves together because things are so fractured now in their organization that it's not a surprise at all that they can't respond when they make a couple mistakes.
Well, and you're seeing mistakes. I mean, even on the goal, on Hughes' second goal. I mean, Sam Carrick, he's been in this league long enough. You can't just lose body positioning when you're on the ice against Hughes. I mean, you have one job. You're the fourth line center. You're on the ice to make sure, and obviously it's a mismatch, right? When you have Carrick's line out there against Hughes, but we watched that clip before the show started, and I noticed it even last night, that 1 second of puck watching, and you lose your guy, and that's all it takes in the National Hockey League. And then on top of it, Arthur, an issue that I'm seeing is this team is playing with really poor details. Even when they try to make let's call it a conservative play, and they try to dump a puck, right? Or they try to have a rim release. A winger's not there. When they dump a puck, they're not getting it by the goalie. The goaltender's cutting it off every time. These little details that I think go unnoticed a lot, but obviously coaches are noticing them and talking about them. Those are areas where you start to look at it, and I would think, and you say, well, this is a coaching thing. Now, granted, the players are not doing their part, and Johnny and I have this conversation all the time. You can't fire your whole team, but you can always make a coaching change. But the Rangers have good players that are playing with bad details, and that's usually where the finger starts getting pointed at the head coach. So is the seat hot for Peter Laviolette? I mean, we were talking. It's become a self-fulfilling prophecy with this guy. Year 1 looks like something. Year 2 looks worse. Year 3 is usually an abomination, right? I mean, I'm just saying almost lost my mic there. I'm just talking about the history for him, right? His history says this is what year 1 looks like, and this is how it goes downhill. How long does Chris Drury stay on this ship?
I mean, so his history is bad, and then Chris Drury's history with Gerard Gallant is, they came off an Eastern Conference final in Gallant's first year. His second year wasn't quite as good. There was some grumbling about they wanted more coaching or whatever, and then they have the complete meltdown in the first round against the Devils. There's a confrontation between coach and GM after Game 4 in that series, and that was the writing on the wall. And last night, Johnny and I were there. We waited, 15, 20 minutes for Peter Laviolette to come in, and we were all kind of wondering what's going on. And there could have been a similar conversation going on between GM and coach that delayed Laviolette getting in there. Who knows what was happening behind the scenes? But if we're at that point again, it's amazing to think this guy is 106 games into his tenure, and they've got a President's Trophy under their belt, and they started this year 12-4-1, and we're barely into December, and now we're talking about, are they going to fire this guy? I think we've all kind of got this mindset around the Rangers, we're all caught up in the chaos and wondering what's going to happen next. And to me, the lack of attention to detail stems from a few things. They're they've aged a little bit. Some of their core guys, I think you can see that guys like Trouba, even leaving aside all the nonsense around him, guys like Mika, guys like Kreider, not necessarily the most consistent players, I think, towards the end of last season, and even 5-on-5 last year, maybe not so great. And now, you know, I think, Colby, you know, when you start to slow down a little bit, it happens a little bit, and then it happens all at once, that maybe you can't keep up anymore. And I think the main part too, to spin off of what's been happening with the memo and Trouba and Kreider being put on a block or put on blast or whatever you want to call it, is Trouba's slowing down. Yes, he's probably been a little bit more checked out than he would like to admit since the summer rumors came up. And now this thing again, and he's got to answer questions about how does it feel to see your name out there in the middle of a season? I know his teammates aren't happy. There's a reason he's the captain of this team. He is the guy that's been the leader. He's not the longest serving Ranger, but when he came in, he did all the captain stuff behind the scenes that I think a lot of fans don't really know happens. He's the guy that brings issues from the players from the room to the front office or to the coaches. He's the guy that organizes a lot of things. He's the guy that wants to have the meetings where people are discussing things. He has one-on-one meetings with guys in the room. He wants to be able to bring things forward in a group way, and not everybody's equipped to do that. And now that he has been kind of publicly humiliated, you'd say, in the last couple months twice, he's maybe not doing those captain things that you need done. And he's not really maybe playing quite so focused on the ice. And I think you're seeing a lot of guys who are saying, well, this guy's not doing it, and we're not really, are we supposed to do it? Are we supposed to step up? Are we supposed to be talking to the coaches, having these meetings, bringing these issues forward? I just think you're seeing a lot of uncertainty in the room and around the guys personality-wise, and I think that's bleeding into the ice. I think it's hard to avoid when you have this kind of situation.
Yeah, I think that was obvious last night when Chris Kreider's a 2-on-0 with Sam Carrick and fumbles the puck on a 2-on-0. I mean, that's just literally the definition of gripping the stick too tight, right? Like that's.
I will say about Kreider on the power play goal, the original play that he tried to make.
Yeah, that was a sick pass.
Like that was a pass to me.
Yeah,
that was not him trying to redirect that on goal.
No,
I actually think he was trying to redirect that through his feet to the back door. Again, I'm not, not trying to polish a turd because that was a turd last night of a game, but that was a nice play. Like that was a very, very heady play by him that I appreciate. But let's go to another topic from last night, Arthur, because this is one that has blown up all over social media. The Devils went with it on their social media page. Jonny was telling us before the show started that you and Valaket actually have done a show together, so you may have as much or more insight on these comments than anyone. But
he's made that comment before, by the way, about the Rangers. He said the Rangers play too much Instagram hockey, so this is nothing new for Ranger fans.
Yeah, the Instagram hockey thing, like that was sort of the cherry on top of the original comment. And look, I think Steve Valaket does a good job on TV. Like there's a reason people love him in New York. But I don't know, like these comments, unless he's trying to send a message to the team through the media, which I don't think that's your job as a broadcaster, but I thought that was kind of a wacky thing to say. Like goal scorers are going to try to score how they're going to score. I assume you've heard the comments at this point, right, Arthur?
I have. And I talked to Valley a little bit about it. He kind of laughed it off. He's always very composed in what he says. And I think being a guy who's a goalie coach, a private goalie coach, and has studied goalies, and like I said, his data site is the best by far for an accurate measure of how goalies are stopping shots and where the shots are coming from. So I always he's my go-to guy, and I think he's probably the best studio analyst in the game for any of the team's broadcasts. He really knows what he's talking about. I think in this case, I don't think he's trying to criticize the Devils or do anything towards Jack Hughes. I think it's more the response or the lack of response. When you see a player making a stylish play, I think we're not so far removed from the days of, hockey, guys trying to Michigan and then, guy gets a cross check in the mouth for it because it's showing up the game or whatever, the kind of the Torts phrase, I think, when he first saw it. But I think there's a lot of players who feel like if you're going to, it's like showboating on a home run to make it 11-1. I think that's the way people like Valley look at it. Maybe some players still look at it that way. And the Rangers maybe don't have that guy to give Jack Hughes a little extra cross check in the back and say like, hey, just play the game the right way. Doesn't mean it's right. Doesn't mean it's wrong. This is the way we experience hockey and sports these days in little bite-sized clips. And, so you can agree or disagree with him. I'm kind of on the fence about it. To me, I don't really care. Jack Hughes is an incredible talent, and he's going to do what he's going to do. And he's also a guy who gets drilled sometimes, like Kreider drilled him later in the game.
I was just going to say,
yeah. So maybe that,
yeah.
And then maybe that's the response. I think when you have a game that one team's struggling and one team's going good, all of a sudden everybody's kind of like, oh yeah, like team that's struggling doesn't get calls or what. It's one of those things where the tide is against you, and so everybody wants to pick apart these certain things. I don't think Steve was saying the Devils shouldn't play this way. I think he was saying the Rangers need to show some life in response to a play that could have made it 3-0, whatever it was, 8 minutes into the game. And he's trying some crazy move instead of just trying to make a hockey move to beat Shesterkin. And, whatever. I think it was it was a funny moment in the game to pick out, and an interesting comments to bring it up by Steve. It's not usually something you see talked about on a broadcast. So, and good on Johnny for his 60 minutes journalism to go and ask Jack Hughes about it.
I didn't ask Jack, but I was going to. I didn't ask him. I definitely wanted to. I wanted to.
Well, and the response was because again, I think Hughes, those young kids, like that move to those guys is a hockey move.
Yeah.
To that generation.
So is the Michigan. Yeah. I get it.
Yeah. And Jack has danced Igor out of his pants before in the playoffs.
Yeah. So
it's new.
That's where I think that I do believe Hughes's response. Like, I really think he probably was like, wait, what? I don't even know how to respond to that. I will echo your sentiment about Steve Valiquette. Like, I didn't agree with his comments last night, and that's fine. But I'm not a Rangers fan. I didn't grow up in the Ranger market, so nobody can say, oh, you have a bias. There are not. Like, Valiquette is up there with any studio analyst there is in hockey. When you actually listen to the way he breaks hockey down, and he doesn't say, he doesn't narrate highlights. He actually breaks hockey down. So I will echo those sentiments, Johnny. Go ahead.
Well, Colby Benya, always a great comment in our chat, just made a great point. Valley made a comment to appeal to the local audience on MSG.
Yeah,
Rangers
of course.
Fans, but the game was carried on NHL Network, so a much broader audience saw and heard it and made a big deal about it, which is true. It's a very good point. But
listen, I've worked in home markets before, and they want their broadcasters to ride the emotional roller coaster with them. And honestly, it's something that I struggled with. And fans in the market in Chicago, they couldn't get me out of Chicago quick enough. There were a number of fans that would have paid for my move, would have bought me a new house, and bought my family and I flights right out of Chicago because I didn't have the emotion towards that team. Because I listen, I wasn't a Chicago Blackhawks fan growing up. I didn't play for the Chicago Blackhawks. So like I do understand that very firsthand.
But there also is something to be said about Jack Hughes and just, what he does to the Rangers. Like, he is now the leader in active NHL goals on Igor Shesterkin, 9 goals on Igor in his career. Like, this guy does come into the Garden and he shines under the bright lights. Like, you can't really deny that about Jack Hughes. And I've heard him talk about it on 32 Thoughts previously, I think a year or a little over a year ago, with Jeff Marek and with Elliot Friedman. Like, he loves going up against Igor Shesterkin. Like, Jack thrives in those moments. And if he had a chance to embarrass Igor on his home ice, do it. Why not?
I agree. It's a good time. It's a good time to do it when the Rangers are struggling. Like, obviously you want to send a message. It's early in the season. They're not dead and buried yet, but you want to be able to do that. It's perfectly fair game to me. I agree.
Yeah. And then Gina, I know she's a loyal listener as well, commented, props to Hughes for sending regards and congratulations up to Sam in the box, though. Haven't seen anyone talk about that. I didn't even know that he did that.
Well, I think every team, the Flyers did something for Sam. I think every NHL team, the people hold Sam Rosen in such high regard. They really do. And for good reason. I've talked about working with him, and I've talked about how unbelievable of a guy he is, but I'm not the first to know and say that. But Arthur, let me just ask you this. Where does this team go from here? Because I've now seen 3 or 4 times, I think Matthew in our chat has asked, like, what is the difference between a slump and a team that needs to blow it up. Like, where does this team go from here? Because I think this is a pretty crucial stretch with how bad this is snowballing.
I just want to make one point, Arthur, before you answer. If I can add to this question, Colby, if that's allowed.
Go ahead.
I tweeted last night Igor's stats, Arthur, over the last 9 games. And just to read those out loud again, over his last 9 starts, Igor Shesterkin is 2-7-0 with a .882 save percentage and a 3.93 goals against. The problem right now is that Igor is not making these saves. This is the same exact team that we've seen all year. Igor was just making those saves before and playing, above and beyond. Like, this is what we're seeing when the Rangers don't get in human goaltending. Right or wrong?
Yeah, I agree. And where do we go from here? I mean, like I said, the fact that it's only been, this is a 1-6-0 run. Lots of teams have that. Good teams, bad teams, mediocre teams. Everybody goes through a stretch like this. The Rangers haven't had a stretch like this in a few years, but if it was just the losing streak, if it was just losing 5 in a row and looking bad doing it, and they had a veteran group, and from the outside, nobody would have said anything about, is Peter Laviolette on the hot seat? Should they trade Chris Kreider or Jacob Trouba? Like, this is what I talk about when I talk about self-inflicted wounds. Nobody would have been saying these things other than the diehards. The fans would have been like, blow it, but that's fan conversation, and it's great.
That's Islander fan stuff.
Okay. Yeah, you're right. None of the Ranger fans panic at all. That you sitting with the most hangdog look on your face down the row in the press row last night. Wasn't it?
I was miserable. Last night.
Yeah, I could tell. But nobody would be talking about this if they didn't start the conversation with the note that went out 2 Sundays ago. Whoever, whatever the intent was, some other stuff that we found out, trying to talk to Vancouver about JT Miller, maybe offering Mika Zibanejad the other way, like a trade that is pure fantasy NHL 25 stuff, because it's not going to happen because one guy's got a full no move and the other guy's on leave. But to go so quickly from a 12-4-1 start to desperation to now we're talking about, are they going to fire this guy, this Hall of Fame coach that they brought in who took them to within 2 wins of the finals last year and won a President's Trophy for them for the first time in a decade? It's very odd to just be sitting here having these conversations and kind of wondering what's going to happen next, because it does feel like a comment section now with this team. It feels like some wild suggestion, be like, yeah, maybe they'll try that. Maybe they'll put Jacob Trouba on waivers, like things that you wouldn't think of. But I think the main issue is that it's still the veteran core that's underachieving for them.
Yeah.
And in this day and age in the NHL, in 20 games, in 25 games in, there is nothing you can do about it other than get them to play better because of salary cap, because of this, because of that. You see that Laviolette's starting to dole out or reduce some ice time. Riley Smith got benched the other night. Jimmy Vesey, not a main character, but a guy who's still been here a long time, was healthy scratch last night. Panarin, after that terrible play on the first goal, didn't play very much at 5-on-5 in the first 2 periods.
Hedl too toward the end of the game, right?
Yeah, that line was terrible. And we talked about Mr. 100-point Alexis Lafreniere, your guy. Since he secured the bag,
he's been
minus 11.
And he's not the only one, but he's the only one who's got his 7-year extension already locked up, and he's the guy that's kind of disappeared since then. So they have a lot of people where no one is saying grabbing the reins. I think the only guys you could really say who've been consistently good are Will Cooley and Capo Caco up front. And Cooley, incredible credit to him. This guy has emerged as a really good top 9 guy this year. And on D, you've seen some good stuff from Braden Schneider. You've seen some real improvement from Zach Jones. But I think outside of that, you haven't really seen anybody kind of continue to move up. We've seen, Adam Fox is still still a really good player. I don't know if he's a top 5 defenseman in the league right now, the way he's playing. Keandre Miller, who also needs a new contract. Haven't seen too much from him. We've talked about Trouba. Ryan Lindgren's really been struggling. So this is a group that if you can pick out 10 or 12 guys that you say, these guys aren't as good as they were, no amount of trade rumors or trades or threats or whatever, or firing coaches is going to change it, because it's more than half the room. They gotta. I echo what Peter Laviolette said, because I think he's kind of frustrated. He says a lot. It's like, we've just got to be better. And everyone says, well, how do you do that? beats the hell out of me. That's
no
why
one knows.
Talking to you guys, like,
yeah,
it's astonishing how quickly it's gotten to this point, and it's a lot of different factors, and
New
a
York.
lot of them.
It's New York, baby.
I don't even know that it's that. I don't. They were cruising along just fine up until 2 weeks ago, and then, you know.
But my point is that the heat gets turned up quickly in New York. Like
but
the bright lights.
It's not from us. It's because the GM pulled the pin and dropped a grenade in the middle of that room. And I don't understand for the life of me why you would do that this early in the season. You save that stuff for the trade deadline. If you want to figure some things out, you save it for the off season. Doing it now can only have the effect that it's had, which is splintering guys, making them want to be elsewhere, making them not focus on their details on the ice, on the things off the ice they need to be prepared for. They're all thinking about what we're thinking about, which is what's coming next. And that's the worst place for a team to be.
And the last thing I will say before we let you go, because we got Carter Hutton getting ready to join the show, and we're gonna have to ask him about Igor Shesterkin. But I personally, and I'm an outsider to the New York Rangers, I still think this team figures it out. I still think they're a playoff team. I still think they have Igor Shesterkin, which nobody else has. I still take Igor Shesterkin in any playoff series against any team. And I just, again, whether they shake it up or they don't, whether they add or they don't, I'm not picking them to win the Stanley Cup right now, but I'm not ringing the 911 bells of this team is screwed. They need to rebuild. Blah. Like, I'm not there yet. This is a bad stretch. Every team goes through bad stretches. You can even see Stanley Cup teams that had bad stretches at times in their seasons. Look at Vegas from their cup run a couple of years ago, right? So that's the last thing I'll say, Johnny. I don't know if you have anything else. We do have Carter Hutton waiting to come in. Arthur, we love and appreciate your time as always. Look, you're probably going to be back here soon because if this snowball keeps getting bigger, you're going to be our go-to. So we
didn't even get
your
to the
time.
Islanders too. I wanted to ask about the Islanders, but
this is the Rangers have really seized the spotlight in a way that only they can. So yeah, I'm sorry that I'm going to have a box of tissues at Johnny's press box seat on Friday for the Penguins coming to town. And frankly, Mike Sullivan, who has always been Chris Drury's number one coaching choice, David Quinn, the first coach that he fired. If those guys come in here and the Penguins do what the Devils just did,
oh boy,
it's going to be a very busy weekend. It's going to be a very busy weekend for me. Johnny's going to be texting me all the time. And you know, honestly, I think it all started to go off a cliff when Johnny tweeted his little handwriting emoji, eyes scoop from a couple of weeks ago. That was the thing. So
was hoping people would forget that, Arthur.
You can take credit for it all you want, big boy, because your little scoop tease, that's what sent everybody over the edge. Everybody wanted to know, and now look where we are.
That guy's dead to me.
Well, thank you for your time, Arthur. I'm glad Arthur pointed that out. We will have you back soon, Arthur. But anyways, the last thing I'll say to you, Johnny, is that
you got a lot more to say to me. We got another 30 minutes to go here.
On the sheet yesterday on Jeff's show, they also blamed Lafreniere's struggles on you. So you're kind of on the forefront of this, but let's bring Carter.
I hold myself accountable. I'll take the blame.
Let's bring Carter Hutton on because he was at the Leafs game last night. There were other games around the NHL last night. Huts, we appreciate you jumping on with us. Before we get to Toronto, we just have to wrap this Ranger conversation, and we got to ask you because I think you heard the end of that, and you heard a lot of my premise of why I think this team is going to be okay is because of Igor Shesterkin. Should people be worried right now? Like I'm still not worried about the guy. What's your take on it? You're a goaltender in the National League.
Yeah, I'm not worried about him yet. You know what I mean? I think it's one of those things where we go through these runs. Look back to last year, right? Last year, he had a tough first half, right? He went to the All-Star game. And then remember the reset he went through, right? He came back. Jonathan Quick played the next two games. It gave him some time. I think they're at a point now where you got to start playing Jonathan Quick a little more to give him a break because sometimes it starts to compile on you when you're not playing well, right? Game after game after game, and they're trying to pound it down his throat. So I think for him, he's totally fine. He's still one of the best goalies in the league, if not the best when he's on. I just think it's more of a team thing, right? You get into a little bit of rut. There's so much more going on there than just Shesterkin. But at this point, it's like, I feel like I went through this when I played in Nashville. I remember with Pekka Rinne, who's a similar player, right? A guy that demands the net, wants to play.
it was like, no matter what I did as the backup, it was, well, he's not playing very well. We got to get him more games to get him going. Or if he was playing well, it's like, well, we got to keep playing him. He's playing well. And I feel like they do that with Shesterkin's at times because it's Laviolette. It's the same thing, right? This is how he managed Pecorine. And I think at times it's like you're trying to force feed him, where maybe if you give your capable backup in Jonathan Quick, you're not going to hurt Jonathan Quick's feeling playing him a few nights. He's been doing it his whole career. Then you give Shesterkin a chance to kind of reset himself and get ready to go. I just
don't know if there's anything you can say about the goalies right now with the guys in front of them, though, Carter. Like, this team, when you watch them, I mean, they're making might level mistakes. Like, any goalie, no matter who's in net. Jonathan Quick just played the Oilers and let up 6. You know, like, no one's safe right now in the blue paint for the Rangers.
I know, but I also think that early in the season when the Rangers did have a bad game, Shesterkin covered up those mistakes.
Yeah,
too,
he did.
Right? So, Johnny, I just think like a little bit of a rest to like reset, maybe a little more time with your goalie coach, more of like that practice scenario. Because when you're playing all the time, there's no practice. You're literally doing the bare minimum, maybe in a morning skate or your routine, and then the rest is just playing. But it's easy when they're playing well, right? When you're playing well, you want to play every single night. You just want the games to keep rolling. In these situations, sometimes it's nice to have a little reset. And I think they did that last year and they saw success. So I wouldn't be surprised if soon we see something like that happen.
Yeah.
All right. So let's switch.
I want to flip the gears. I want to flip the gears here.
Yeah, I was gonna say
flip it. Somebody flip it.
I'm flipping the gears here, Colby, because Carter Hutton called me an idiot a month or two ago when I said the Leafs are going to win the President's Trophy, and they're 4 points back, and we're 24 games into the season. So tell me now why I'm a genius.
No, I still don't think you're a genius, but I honestly love the way they're playing, and I don't know if I called you an idiot. I might have just agreed with Colby. I think those words came out of my mouth. Honestly, I watched them last night. Got a chance. I brought my little guy to the game. Just seeing the way they play, it gives me more potential for this Leafs team. I think Craig Berube's done a good job of just playing more predictable hockey. And I think you're seeing that with the success of these goalies, right? You got a guy with a 924 in Anthony Stolarz and Joseph Woll with a 923, who's Joseph Woll has been very good as of late as well. And I still think Joseph Woll's ceiling is higher than Stolarz. Mm-hmm. But last night, I watched morning skate yesterday, and I watched Stolarz, and he reminded me a bit of myself. Like, he didn't look very good. He was going through the motions. He was like, and I love it, though, because I feel like I was sitting with guys, and I'm like, they're watching it, and they're like, oh, man, Stolarz keeps letting goals. And I'm like, boys, it's morning skate. It's morning skate. And then, like, to see the way he battled last night, that second period, he was under ambush, big saves. I think he needs a nickname, Big Sexy, because he is just, like, big, calm. He, like, makes it look so easy. And I just think the way that they're playing right now has so much more potential to translate to playoff success, right? They're not living off the rush. They're actually playing a complete game, and it's a lot of fun to watch.
Let me ask you this about Anthony Stolarz, because Vic has been annoying the shit out of me about this. He's telling me that Anthony Stolarz should be on Team USA. And I'm sitting here telling him, look, Anthony Stolarz has played a really good small sample size of games this year, right? He's not playing every night. He did have to play a lot early because Woll was injured. But I keep saying, like, Woll and Stolarz are like perfect for each other because neither of them are in that top 5 of goaltenders in the NHL. But you could make a case that, like, they're the perfect complement to split. One guy doesn't get worn down. You've told us how hard it is to have a starting mentality and how physically and emotionally that can wear you down. And what I keep telling Vic is, like, I don't think you can put Stolarz on Team USA when you have these other guys that have had massive bodies of work and they've just been better for longer periods of time. And then I watched them last night. I watched Stolarz play that game, right? There were staggered start times. We had the 7 p.m. game and the 7:30 game. So I was able to watch 80-90% of the Leafs game. Look, I know it's only the Blackhawks, but in that second period, Stolarz is a difference maker in that building in Toronto last night and makes some really big saves, some really timely saves. I don't know. Like, do you agree with Vic, or am I right telling Vic, like, you're just not there? It's just not going to happen.
So I think I would agree with Vic in the sense of, like, if Stolarz was Canadian, I'd say there's no chance because Canada doesn't have an outright guy and you need as many number one potential goalies as you can to try to figure it out. But when I look at Team USA and I look at Jake Ottinger and Connor Hellebuck being our 1A, 1B, right? Either way, like, those two guys are starting for any country. I don't mind the idea of a guy who's been in that role, who understands it, who gets thrown into a tough situation. He can go in there and play well. I also think there is some heavy hitters, right? You're talking about Jeremy Swayman. We talk about other guys that are United States potential goalies. But I don't mind this idea of a guy that's the hot hand because you have if you get the Stolarz, you're kind of screwed anyway at this point, I would assume, right? Like you're not really, Hellebuck's leash is going to be so long. And you're going to bring in a guy that can gain experience, can be a good locker room, a good number 3 guy. Not that Jeremy Swayman can't, but he's more labeled as your number 1 outright guy. And I also feel like with the way that USA's back end is, like they have a really, really good back end. And I would assume it's going to be predictable hockey, very similar to what he's dealing with right now. The Leafs are doing a good job of protecting him. So I think it would be an easy transition for him going from his, being in Florida, being in Toronto, where they're playing well. So I do like that idea just because of the fact you have Connor Hellebuck and Jake Ottinger. So by the time it gets to Anthony Stolarz, you're on your last leg at that point anyway.
Well, let me ask you a question.
That's why we brought you on, because I never in a million years would have thought about that, just understanding the role of being a backup. And he has been a career backup, right? So I never thought about that. And we'll find out here. I think the rosters are announced in the next 24 hours. I'm surprised they haven't been leaked. I know players have already been notified. So players actually who made the team, I think, already know, because the Flyers, like Sanheim and Konechny, have already found out that they made the team. So I wonder if the USA guys know. Go ahead, Johnny.
No. As a team, I'm curious, because the Leafs right now have the 3rd best technically defensive numbers, allowing 2.54 goals against per game. I don't have like the underlying numbers in front of me, but is this a case of the Leafs also defending better in front of their goalies, or is it really like Stolarz and Wall playing that much better than what we've seen from Leafs goaltending previously, or a mix of both?
I think a mix of both, Johnny, honestly. I think it goes hand in hand, right? You're going to have a team that defends better. You're going to have better goaltending consistently. I also think it's just the fact that Craig Berube has structure. It's not just defensive, like the defenseman. It's the forwards. It's the responsibility. Look at how the Leafs, like off the rush, have gone downhill big time. Where, yes, you go to a Leafs game, like normally against the Hawks, it would have been run and gun the whole game, right? Where it opens up a bit, but I think their consistency is so much more important for this team. And I like their back end. I thought Philip Myers last night was really, really good for this team. I think Connor Timmins is the guy that might be the odd man out when Jake McCabe's back. I was able to chat with Jake. I played with him for a few years in Buffalo, and he'll be back soon. Like unbelievable guy, right? Came out, we were chatting, and I just think the fact of the matter is the predictability in the Leafs game is so much higher now. Where when I look back to, you look at the goal the other night where against Stolarz, where Sam Reinhart scored shorthanded walking right down the pipe. I don't know if you guys remember that one. That's Leafs hockey from years past. Like, yes, generate offense, then just give up a chance that's a grade A and a sloppy one right inside the house, where now it's like the game is so much more predictable. Yes, there's going to be a tough few saves. It's the NHL, right? Teams are going to get chances. But I find the predictability in the defensive zone is through the roof right now. And as a goalie, that is like, it reminds me of when I played in St. Louis. It was like, at some nights, my hardest job was getting to the rink on time because we were so good. It was like, I had to make like 10 saves. The rest were just like, there was no business. Then I went to Buffalo and it was like, I'm worried about this shot as I'm worried about a backdoor, as I'm worried about a slot play. The predictability and maturity in that back end now, and I think what Craig Berube has brought to that team is huge.
Yeah, in years past, I know you're a sports betting guy. I feel like everyone would have jumped on the Blackhawks last night at like what, plus 330 or something. Like, wasn't it a thing the Coyotes come to Toronto and they always beat the Leafs when they're, the Leafs are minus 400 in those games? But it's times are changing in Toronto.
It is. Yeah, I know. I saw that line at minus 400. It's something you want to dabble with, but that Hawks team is just frustrating. Even the body language of players last night, and not to get too much into the Hawks because obviously they have a soft spot for me, kind of gave me my first chance, but they need to get something going there better I think to protect Connor Bedard. You don't want him to be playing on this brutal team for too long.
But you did give him Teravainen, who I was like shocked the amount of misplays that Teravainen made last night. I mean, he kind of looked like a shell of himself. I was like, wow, maybe Carolina insulated him. Like, I'm not really sure, but there were plays on the power play where he wasn't able to go skate to stick clean, like things that I would think would be pretty routine for him. Maybe just it's such a different situation for him going from a well-oiled machine to a team that seems to be struggling a little bit. But let me just go back to Philip Myers for a second. I would say, you're not going to get a lot of good, consistent hockey out of Myers. And that's over watching him play in the National Hockey League and in and out of the league for the last number of years. And I remember it was when he was in Philly, he's got the intangibles, but man, he's an adventure. Like there's shifts. Like I remember Craig Anderson telling me, like, if you want to have a long career, you can't be an adventure when you're on the ice. You're a defenseman. Like, I need to know what you're going to do. Right. And Philip Myers to me is an adventure when he's on the ice. Like for a goaltender, you're like, well, what is this guy going to do next? But how about the defensive mindset and mentality from Mitch Marner right now? I mean, like I said this on our show yesterday, to me, it's not so much structure or system as it is mentality. Like I see a team with a different mentality in the Toronto Maple Leafs. So they're not winning games like boat racing teams. They're winning games by, I mean, see all the shot blocks they had last night. I'm like, wow, this to me is the Craig Berube effect, not system structure. It's details and mentality.
You know, and I hate to say it, Colby, but because I feel like it's gone on for so long in Toronto here. I know Vic's probably listening right now. It's on the edge of his seat, but it's like, it's, you know, like every year you're like, oh, it seems different. It seems different, right? And they've said it so much, but honestly, I hate to say it, but it does, man. It feels like this is like they've bought in. And I also feel like a lot of the times it felt like it was just lip service, right? They would go to the media and they'd be like, you know, we're doing this. And then like they leave there and they're like, oh, this is such a joke, man. I want my money. I want my cookies. I want my points. We're like what I feel like is important here. Like, it feels like they're leaving the rink right now and the boys are going for a beer or a bite to eat. And they're like, they drank the Kool-Aid now. Like, it feels like they're all in, like the leaders are showing they're playing that way. Like, it's one thing for Mitch Marner and William Nylander and Austin Matthews to like go to the media and be like, hey, this is what we want to do. We're building towards something, blah, blah, blah. As they leave the rink in their Ferraris and they go and make their money and they could care less because they know they're going to get their dough, right? But it feels like now for them to like stamp their legacy on this team, they understand the task that they need to win in the playoffs. And to do that, they have to buy into the system. And I think it's headed in the right direction.
Well, tell me if I'm wrong here, Carter, because I feel like prior to the season, the Atlantic Division gets all the praise, right? Like, that's the toughest division in the NHL. And right now, like outside of Toronto, like who's been that consistent? Like Boston's been shit. You know, I know they picked it up lately. Florida's been a little inconsistent this year even. Tampa's been, you know, very inconsistent. And the rest, you know, Buffalo's had a good couple spurts, but this division's pretty weak right now, no? Like
it is, yes. I honestly think for me, like this Metro division has done so like a lot better. I think exceeding expectations coming in the year. Yeah. For me, it's the Washington Capitals. I think they were just a wild card. I feel like nobody really, I can't say nobody, but I definitely did not think they were going to take a step forward like they have this year.
I didn't either.
Jeremiah did.
I was a hater.
Jeremiah did. Give Jeremiah.
I'll give Jeremiah props.
Hand up.
He saw it. He saw it. He said it. I said they were a playoff team, but I didn't expect this.
Yeah, I was like Washington, you know, you think about the Island, like, you know, just those bubble teams, right? Maybe they sneak in again. Like that Cinderella run last year and the way they played and the way Charlie Lindgren was, like Darcy Kemper struggled last year too. Look at that. Like now you have a guy in there, Logan Thompson, who's been unbelievable. Like there's a guy that is up for potentially being on the Four Nations Cup, right? There's for Team Canada. There's so many good storylines to this. And again, I think it's the fact you get a younger coach in there, a change of scenery, a different voice, and a guy that's more relatable to players. It makes a difference nowadays, right, Coach? You guys get it. You guys played. Players are different now.
I played for Carbs. I played 2 games for him, so I've been in the room with them. Yeah.
Yeah, like he's a good dude. Like even when I was in Toronto, my time was short, a few months as he was an assistant, but he's just like more of an approachable person, right? Where sometimes those older figureheads, it falls apart. Even when I was in Arizona, I think this is like the extreme. Andre Tournier, Bear, he would do like, we did personality tests, right? So he would figure out what our personality was, and we would work with like a sports therapist that would work with the whole team, and then he would figure out how players responded to certain things. So instead of like the old school guy coming in and be like, yeah, wake up, you're playing like crap, like blah blah blah, like rip into you, where like now he's learning that like the way people act and how they respond to stuff to get the most out of people, right? I know it's like I still think it's a man's league at a time, but it's good to understand your players and what's going to motivate them to be their best.
Yeah, sometimes getting yelled at isn't what motivates you.
Yes, 100%.
We know Johnny doesn't respond well to getting yelled
at. Shit my pants every time.
Last thing I want to ask you about, and watching Casey DeSmith play really well last night for the Dallas Stars, come in relief, or not coming in relief, but giving Jake Ottinger a night off. You know, they win that game 2-1, makes a lot of timely saves. That's actually not where I want to spend my time, but this kind of sparked when we were talking pre-show. I was like, let's ask Hutz if he can come on and talk about it. When I see the trade of Scott Wedgewood going to Colorado, I'm like, oh, well, like it works really well with Casey DeSmith being that type of guy. Can Scott Wedgewood go into Colorado and be that guy and be what Casey DeSmith is to Ottinger? Because if I'm not mistaken, that's kind of who Wedgewood has been in his career in his different stops. He's kind of been a guy that can, like, you could put a Band-Aid on a bullet wound and it'll work for a little bit. And it's not a guy who's going to go in and play 80% of your games, but he could play 40%, maybe, and give you a little bit of stability back there. And maybe I'm wrong. That's why I wanted to ask you.
No, I don't think you're wrong. I think you're pretty bang on. And I think he's done it twice in his career where he's come into teams that are on like big losing streaks. In Arizona, they had lost a ton. When I was there on the IR, Scott came in and played very well. But I also don't think he is like going to bring you to the promised land too, right? I'm a big Scott Wedgewood fan. I love what he's done with his career. He was our number 3 in Buffalo. He's really worked his way in, especially as a smaller guy, right? He's not a guy that really has that gigantic presence in the net, and which immediately you need to do more to win teams over because you don't have that presence. I also feel like Colorado just needs some stability there, right? And confidence, right? And I understand how it just can kill your team when you don't trust your goalie. When you go into a game and you're worried about the way you're going to defend, and I don't know if you guys have ever had a guy where that's when he's having a shaky night, the whole team knows. You're on the bench being like, first shot goes in or something, like the first save, you can tell he's fighting it. You're like, oh man, it's one of these nights. Then it's hard to play. Then it's hard to defend. Then it's hard to be worried about wherever the shots are coming from. So I think Scott will add stability there. I also think at the end of the day, though, you have a team that needs to win in the now, right? So if Georgiev is not going to get it going, like you need to make some sort of move to get a guy. I don't know where you get him because everybody wants a guy, right? It's just the way it works. There's only so many seats at the table. But I feel like Scott Wedgewood is a good upgrade, just maturity-wise. I also feel like this team needs to do a better job here, I think, moving forward and, you know, defending. They can't be in these 5-4 shootouts all the time and they want to try to win a Stanley Cup.
Yeah. I mean, they do have McKinnon, McCarr, and Rantanen, and that, you know, I'll take those 3.
Yeah, but you need a goalie. You need a goalie, though. You need a goalie, right?
For their problems, it's that team. You know, it's
yeah.
Yeah, Carter. I mean, listen, I don't really have much else. Colby, you have any final thoughts before we let Carter go here? I know we got some.
No, look, we really appreciate you jumping on and kind of going through these goalies with us. You know, again, always good to get your point of view. You played for a number of teams. You were that guy who stepped in and steadied chips at time. So you've just seen a lot of different things. And I think you can learn a lot of hockey by being in a lot of dressing rooms and watching a lot of hockey. Like, you've had the best seat in the house for a good part of your career. So I think that's what kind of makes you a good analyst. So we'll check in with you here again soon. This Leafs goaltending situation is something Vic wants to talk about on our show every single day. So obviously, and then, you know, like I said, we heard the guys talking a little bit about it, you know, on Leafs Morning Take. I'm sure they'll be talking about it again today over on Leafs Nation. So Huts, we appreciate your time, man, and enjoy your time in Toronto, and we'll talk to you soon. All right.
Yeah, no problem, guys. Thanks for having me as always.
Thanks, Carter. Appreciate it. Hell of a show so far today, huh? This has been one of the more fun ones I feel like recently. Just a lot of energy. Seen a lot of comments in the chat. The chat's been buzzing today. I'm sorry that we haven't gotten to any questions, even though I feel like most of it is just comments.
Well, a lot of them are going at each other a little bit too.
Is that what's happening right now?
Chat. Yeah, there's been a lot of, you know, people throwing ideas back and forth, and I'm trying to scroll up the chat a little bit to you know, to see what people are saying. But look, I think that there's certainly some interesting stories brewing around the league, which we love. Obviously creates a lot of intrigue, you know, in and out throughout the league. But one thing I do want to say, and I say to you guys quite often, is if you are enjoying this episode, we would appreciate a like on the YouTube. If you're not subscribed to the YouTube channel, make sure you do. Obviously, we had the big announcement yesterday, the debut of the sheet, which I did get a chance to watch. Johnny, I know you said you got to catch up on that episode. You'll probably do that right after the show. Yeah. It's probably a good thing you weren't listening because they did take quite a few shots at you. You know, they did take their shots at you. And I can tell you this, Daily Face-Off live at noon today. I'll be with Frank Saravalli. Tyler Yaremchuk is a travel day for him. So you can catch us at noon. And then we've got the sheet again at 3 p.m. today, which you'll now have live every day on the Nation Network. One thing I know that they're going to talk about on the sheet today is they're going to talk about the first Instagram hockey player. Okay. Obviously coming off of Valley's comments on MSG Networks. And this is a guy who actually played in the 80s. All right. So Jeremiah, you're a historian. Singsy's we have a lot of historians on this chat. So start racking your brain for who that may be. Okay. He was a beloved NHLer. He played in the 80s, and he's really the first Instagram hockey player. I'm not going to tell you who it is.
You still think it's Rob Schremp?
They're going to talk about it. Listen, Johnny, I was born in the 80s, so I don't have a great grasp on who the hockey, I didn't watch a lot of hockey in the 80s, right? But I always say Rob Schremp was kind of the first guy. Jeff Merrick's going to go back even further and tell you guys at 3 p.m. on the sheet, I don't know when they'll get to it, who that first ever Instagram hockey player was, who was clearly well before his time. So we've got a stacked lineup for you on the Daily Faceoff YouTube page. As I said, it starts with us. It goes to Saravalli and Urem Chuck at noon. Usually, like I said, I'll be filling in. And then it goes to Jeff Merrick at 3 p.m. On the sheet. So without further ado, I see some people guessing in the chat.
Yeah.
Keep the guesses going.
Everyone calling themselves sheetheads. I love that.
And then make sure you get in the chat for that show, and I'm sure that they'll address it. I did see them addressing the chat yesterday on the debut of the sheet, so that I'm sure that will be an element of the show. So, anyways, Johnny, moving on. I think we've got we've got a little bit more to get to here before we wrap the show.
Yeah, we got our bet of the day presented by Bet365, going with a bit of a different approach tonight. We're actually looking at the Colorado Avalanche at the Buffalo Sabres. We're taking the over 6.5 at plus 100. Pretty good value on that over. Obviously, Colorado is a team that can score a lot of goals, and they also give up plenty of goals. Buffalo's been struggling to score a bit lately, but I think they're going to let up at least 4 tonight. And I would put my money on it that Buffalo can at least try to score 2 or 3. So I like the over in this game. I think there's a lot of high-flying offense in it, and neither team is really known for their defensive lockdown or tight checking. So I think this one will be very back and forth, high-flying. We hit last night in the under Chicago and Toronto game, and hopefully we can keep that streak going tonight. So that'll be the bet of the night tonight, the over 6.5 in Buffalo and Toronto. There is one other thing I want to say, Colby, but I don't know if you have any other thoughts before we kind of get to the end of the show. I meant to bring this up yesterday, and I feel bad that I didn't, but obviously this is very close to home for me. My thoughts literally are and prayers and love are with Connor Kaysen and his family. If those of you have not heard what happened over the weekend, a high school player at Massapequa High School went into cardiac arrest during the intermission of a game. He was actually playing against my hometown team, Syosset, and my friend Matt Bobko is actually the coach of Massapequa, so my friend was behind the bench when this happened. And I'm thinking of Bobko and the entire family, the entire community. Massapequa and Syosset are, 2 rivalry high schools, and they were playing a charity game actually for a child who passed away in a car crash a little over a year ago. So just really sad and really tragic. And I really wanted to bring this up yesterday, and I totally forgot, and I feel horrible about it. And just really thinking of Connor Kaysen and his family and friends, yesterday, the day before, today. And I just don't even know what to say about it, honestly. It's been really tough, but really thinking of my friend Bobko and his whole team, because I can't imagine what they're going through.
Yeah, listen, man, tragedy, really anywhere in the world, but these hockey incidents, they hit close to home. Obviously, the young man in St. Louis, and now this, it's tragic. It really is. So look, all I could say about it, when or if there is a GoFundMe or there is some sort of fundraiser for him, hockey community, you guys are always the best. I mean, anytime there's a hockey person in need and that goes out across social media, the hockey community bands together. And I mean, everybody pitches in, whether it's $1, $5, whatever it is. I see everybody pitching in on those types of things. So look, just make sure if you have the ability to help and you see that, do whatever you can do. I certainly know Johnny and I will, and I know the network will. So,
well said, Johnny. Totally heartbreaking. Tough way to end a great show, but it is important to talk about these things when they happen. So again, we appreciate everybody today. We went a little bit long, but again, as always, we love you guys. Our chat. I don't know what the actual message count was because I don't have YouTube up, but this had to be one of the most chatted episodes that we've probably ever had since we started the show. I mean, it was hard to keep up with, right? You can see the timestamps on the chat, and it's like 08, 08, 08, 08, 09, 09. I mean, it was.
I messed up the start of the show because the chat was going.
It was just absolutely buzzing. So we will keep close eye on a lot of these topics. Obviously with Johnny and his situation with the Rangers, it's never going away. There's going to be, I'm excited to see these rosters announced for the Four Nations Cup, because I think it's going to spark a lot of debate. And I do think we're going to get a little bit of an idea at the way that these two teams are, looking at building their Olympic teams, because yes, the Four Nations Cup is right in front of our face, but I do think that a big part of this Four Nations Cup is sort of a precursor to the Olympics in a year, the Winter Olympics, and how we're going to see those teams built and how those GMs are looking at it, how those coaches are going to look at deploying those players. Are we going to see young stars emerge, whether it's Bedard and Celebrini? Will Russia be a part of the Olympics in a year, right? I mean, I want to see the Russian hockey team a part of these events. That's a massive part of this. I understand that there is geopolitical, forces that I'm not going there, but I'm just saying, just from a hockey standpoint, it would be great to see those stars in a part of these events. There's no doubt about that. So, Johnny, I don't think you have anything else to say here. I know you love to put your hand up when I'm wrapping the show. So we'll call it a day there. We appreciate everybody's time today. We appreciate everybody rolling with us today. We appreciate the discourse in the chat. Make sure you're with us at noon for DFO Live. Make sure you're with us at 3 p.m. for the sheet. And we will see everybody right back here 9 a.m. tomorrow.
What's up, hockey fans? If you enjoyed that video, then you need to be hitting the subscribe button right here at Daily Faceoff. Exclusive interviews and analysis from our hockey insider Frank Saravalli, fantasy updates from Brock Sagan, and a daily live show at noon Eastern, Monday through Friday. You don't want to miss any of the fantastic content, so hit that subscribe button.